The world has tried to define your worth with mirrors, measurements, approval, and noise. It has trained you to look outward first, to ask whether you are enough, visible enough, desirable enough, successful enough. But before anyone ever looked at you, before culture formed an opinion, before comparison entered your mind, God already saw you, and he called you beautiful. Not because of how you look, but because of who you are and whose you are. There is a beauty on your life that cannot be edited, filtered, or erased. There is a radiance placed on you by God himself, and whether you feel it today or not, it is real. If you have ever doubted your value, questioned your identity, or wondered whether God truly delights in you, this message is meant to wake something up inside you. Because there are signs, clear, undeniable signs that you are a gorgeous woman, deeply loved by God, and they have nothing to do with perfection. The first sign is this: you carry a quiet strength that has been forged through surrender, not control. You have walked through seasons that could have hardened your heart, yet somehow your spirit stayed tender. You learned to bend without breaking, to trust when answers didn't come quickly, to keep believing even when disappointment whispered that hope was foolish. That strength did not come from willpower alone. It came from God holding you when you thought you were standing on your own. You didn't survive because you were strong enough. You survived because grace carried you. There is something breathtaking about a woman who has been through pain and still chooses faith. Heaven sees that strength and calls it beautiful. God sees the nights you cried in secret, the prayers you could barely finish, the moments you showed up anyway. That resilience, shaped by trust in him, is a mark of his love on your life. True beauty has always been one of the most misunderstood ideas in the world. From an early age, women are taught, sometimes subtly, sometimes aggressively, that beauty must be earned, maintained, and proven. It is placed in the hands of mirrors, social standards, opinions, and comparisons. Over time, this constant measuring begins to shape identity, making many women believe their value rises and falls with how they are perceived. But God never authored that definition. Long before society decided what was attractive or acceptable, God already spoke his verdict over you. He did not study your features or calculate your achievements. He looked at you as his creation and called you beautiful because you belong to him. This truth dismantles the exhausting pressure to perform for worth and replaces it with rest in divine identity. When beauty is defined by the world, it is always fragile. It depends on youth, validation, and trends that constantly shift. One season you are celebrated, the next you are invisible. Living under that system creates fear, fear of aging, fear of failure, fear of not measuring up. God's definition of beauty is completely different. It is unshakable because it is rooted in his nature, not your condition. He does not change his mind about you when you struggle, fall short, or feel unsure. His declaration of beauty is not conditional, it is eternal. When God calls you beautiful, he is speaking from a place of perfect knowledge. He sees your heart, your intentions, your battles, and your becoming. Nothing about you surprises him, and nothing disqualifies you from his love. Understanding this truth begins to heal the deep wounds caused by comparison. Comparison convinces you that beauty is limited, that someone else's shine diminishes your own. But God does not create duplicates or compete within his creation. Your beauty is not borrowed or measured against another woman's life. It is uniquely expressed through your personality, your journey, your resilience, and your faith. When you constantly compare yourself, you unknowingly question God's craftsmanship. Accepting God's definition of beauty is an act of trust. It says, God, I believe you knew what you were doing when you made me. That belief slowly shifts how you see yourself and others, replacing jealousy with gratitude and insecurity with peace. This divine definition of beauty also changes how you move through life. When your worth no longer depends on approval, you stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never meant to hold you. You speak with more honesty. You love with more freedom. You stop apologizing for your presence and start honoring the life God placed within you. This confidence is not loud or arrogant. It is grounded. It comes from knowing you are already accepted. A woman who knows she is beautiful to God does not chase validation. She attracts peace. She no longer needs to prove herself because she is rooted in truth. There will still be moments when the old voices try to return. Culture is persistent, and insecurity does not disappear overnight. But each time you choose to agree with God instead of the world, something strengthens inside you. You learn to look at yourself through grace rather than criticism. You begin to see your reflection not as a list of flaws, but as a testimony of God's creativity and care. Even your imperfections take on new meaning, not as failures, but as places where God's power and beauty are revealed. To embrace God's definition of beauty is to step into freedom. It releases you from the exhausting cycle of comparison and performance. It allows you to rest in the truth that you are already enough because God says so. And when God speaks, his word carries authority. He does not flatter or exaggerate. He tells the truth. If he calls you beautiful, then beauty is written into your identity, not temporarily, not conditionally, but forever. Strength is often celebrated as independence, control, and the ability to handle everything without help. The world praises women who never break, never ask, and never slow down. Over time, this definition teaches you to hide weakness and carry burden silently, as if needing support somehow diminishes your value. But the strength God forms in a woman looks very different. It is not loud or self-made. It is quiet, steady, and rooted in surrender. It is the kind of strength that develops when you reach the end of yourself and discover that God has been holding you all along. There were moments in your life when you had no clear plan, no guaranteed outcome, and no energy left to pretend you were fine. In those moments, control slipped from your hands, and all you could do was trust. That trust did not feel powerful at the time. It felt like vulnerability. It felt like weakness. Yet those were the very moments when your faith deepened and your spirit was strengthened. You learned that surrender is not giving up. It is placing what you cannot manage into the hands of a God who can. Every time you chose to pray instead of panic, to believe instead of harden, you were being strengthened in ways you could not see. This kind of strength is forged in hidden places. It is built in late-night prayers, silent tears, and decisions to keep going when quitting would have been easier. No applause marked those moments. No one praised your endurance. But God was present in every second. He was shaping your character, teaching you that your security does not come from having everything figured out, but from being deeply rooted in him. You did not survive because you were emotionally invincible. You survived because grace sustained you when your own strength ran out. Surrender also taught you humility, and humility is one of the strongest spiritual qualities a person can carry. It takes courage to admit you need God. It takes faith to release control and trust his timing. This humility did not make you smaller, it made you grounded. You stopped fighting battles that were never yours to win and learned to stand firm in the ones God called you to face. In doing so, your strength became steady instead of frantic, peaceful instead of pressured. You learned how to rest without quitting and to trust without knowing every detail. The beauty of this strength is that it does not harden your heart. Many people survive pain by building walls, but surrender teaches you to stay soft while still standing. You learn how to be resilient without becoming bitter, how to be discerning without becoming closed, how to be wise without becoming cold. This balance is rare and precious. It is evidence that God has been shaping your inner life, not just managing your circumstances. A woman who remains tender after hardship carries a strength that is deeply beautiful to God. As time passed, you may have noticed that your confidence no longer comes from proving yourself. You are not driven by the need to be everything to everyone. You know your limits, and you are no longer ashamed of them. This awareness is not weakness, it is wisdom. You have learned that saying no can be just as powerful as saying yes, and that trusting God with your boundaries is an act of faith. Strength formed through surrender knows when to stand firm and when to step back. Even now, this strength continues to grow. Each season invites you to surrender again, to trust deeper, to release what you cannot control. And each time you do, God meets you with grace. You are not becoming weaker through surrender. You are becoming more secure. You are learning that true strength is not about self-reliance, but God-reliance. And that kind of strength cannot be shaken because it is anchored in a love that never fails. In a world that often rewards detachment and emotional distance, feeling deeply can seem like a liability. You may have been told you are too sensitive, too emotional, too affected by things others brush off easily. Over time, those words can make you want to harden your heart, to care less, to protect yourself by shutting down. But God did not design your heart to be numb. He designed it to be alive. Your ability to feel deeply is not an accident or a flaw. It is a reflection of the heart God placed within you, a heart capable of love, empathy, and compassion in a way that mirrors his own. When you feel the pain of others, it is because you were created to notice what others overlook. You sense sorrow in rooms where smiles hide brokenness. You are moved by injustice, loneliness, and unmet needs because your spirit is attentive. This sensitivity allows you to connect, to comfort, to intercede in ways that logic alone never could. God often entrusts deep feeling hearts with sacred assignments because they are willing to carry burdens that others avoid. Compassion is not weakness. It is strength expressed through love. There have been moments when your openness led to hurt. Loving deeply means risking disappointment, misunderstanding, and rejection. It would have been easier to close your heart after those experiences, to build emotional walls and keep everyone at a distance. Yet something within you resisted that temptation. Even when wounded, you chose to keep loving. That choice did not come from naivety. It came from faith. It came from a belief, sometimes conscious, sometimes instinctive, that love is still worth it. God honors that courage. Every time you choose compassion over bitterness, you align yourself with his nature. Your emotions also draw you closer to God. When you feel deeply, you pray honestly. You bring your full self before him, your joy, your grief, your confusion, your gratitude. You do not offer rehearsed words or polished prayers. You offer your heart. God welcomes that vulnerability. He is not intimidated by emotion. He is moved by it. Your tears are not signs of instability. They are expressions of trust. They say, God, I believe you are safe enough to see me like this. That kind of relationship is intimate and powerful. Feeling deeply also sharpens your ability to rejoice. You celebrate small victories. You notice beauty in simple moments. You are easily touched by kindness, laughter, and connection. This capacity for joy is just as important as your sensitivity to pain. It allows you to live fully, not guarded by fear, but open to wonder. God delights in that openness. It reflects his own joy over creation, his pleasure in life and relationship. A woman who feels deeply experiences life in color, not in shades of gray. There may still be days when your emotions feel overwhelming, when you wish you could turn the volume down. In those moments, God does not ask you to change who you are. He invites you to rest in high. He becomes the steady place where your emotions can settle, the anchor that holds you when feelings surge. Over time, you learn discernment, how to feel without being controlled by emotion, how to care without carrying every burden alone. God teaches you balance, not numbness. Your compassion creates impact in ways you may never fully see. A listening ear, a timely word, a prayer offered in faith. These moments matter deeply to God. They are expressions of love that echo into eternity. You may not always receive recognition for them, but heaven takes notice. God values your heart, your willingness to feel, your refusal to harden. In a world growing colder, your compassion is a light. To feel deeply is to live authentically. It is to allow God's love to flow through you without obstruction. Your heart, with all its sensitivity and strength, is one of the clearest signs that you are deeply loved by God. He entrusted you with this capacity because he knew you would reflect his love in ways that change lives. There is a restlessness that lives inside you that cannot be satisfied by surface level success. Even when things appear to be going well, there is a quiet inner voice that asks deeper questions. Why am I here? What is my life meant to produce? What does any of this mean beyond today? That longing is not dissatisfaction or ingratitude. It is evidence of divine intention. God placed eternity in your heart, and your spirit recognizes when life is being lived below its purpose. You were never designed to live only for applause, comfort, or approval. You were created to matter. From an early stage, you may have noticed that recognition alone never fulfilled you. Alignments fade quickly. Achievements bring temporary satisfaction. Even moments of celebration leave you wanting something more lasting. This is not because you are ungrateful or impossible to please, but because your soul was designed to respond to purpose, not popularity. God wired you to seek alignment with him. When you feel restless in shallow environments or unfulfilled by empty success, it is your spirit signaling that it was made for depth. That inner pull is not a burden. It is a gift guiding you toward your calling. Purpose has a way of shaping your decisions, often in quiet and unseen ways. You find yourself choosing integrity over convenience, growth over comfort, obedience over ease. Sometimes these choices cost you. You may have been misunderstood for not chasing what everyone else was chasing. You may have felt lonely for walking away from paths that promised attention but lacked substance. Yet even in those moments, something within you remained steady. You sensed that faithfulness mattered more than being admired. That instinct reflects a heart aligned with God's priorities. This desire for purpose also affects how you measure success. Instead of asking, "Am I impressive?" you begin to ask, "Am I becoming who God called me to be?" Instead of chasing recognition, you seek fruitfulness. This shift brings freedom. It releases you from the exhausting need to be seen and allows you to serve from sincerity. You understand that some of the most important work God does through you will never be celebrated publicly. And yet, that unseen obedience carries eternal weight. God delights in what is done with a pure heart, even when no one else notices. There are NS when purpose feels clear and seasons when it feels distant. At times, you may feel lost or unsure, wondering whether you missed something or made a wrong turn. But God does not revoke purpose because of confusion. He is patient and faithful, guiding you step by step. The longing for meaning that stays with you during uncertainty is proof that God is still at work. Even when you cannot see the full picture, your desire to live rightly keeps you connected to Him. This hunger for purpose draws you closer to God's presence. You seek His guidance not just for blessings, but for direction. You want your life to reflect His heart. This posture transforms prayer from routine into relationship. You begin to listen as much as you speak. You learn to trust His timing, even when progress feels slow. Purpose teaches patience because it is built over time, not rushed for approval. Living for purpose also deepens your compassion. You recognize that everyone is searching for meaning in some form. This awareness softens your judgments and strengthens your empathy. You become more gracious, understanding that people act from places of longing and insecurity. Your life becomes a quiet invitation, showing others that there is more to live for than surface-level success. A woman drawn to purpose over applause is living from divine intention. This desire is a sign of God's hand on your life, shaping you for impact that outlasts recognition. Your longing for meaning is not something to silence. It is something to honor. It is God's way of reminding you that your life was designed to echo into eternity. There comes a moment in a woman's life when exhaustion sets in, not physical ion, but the deep weariness of trying to be someone else. For a long time, you may have felt the pressure to adjust, adapt, and edit yourself to fit expectations that were never designed with you in mind. You learned how to read rooms, measure reactions, and minimize parts of yourself that felt inconvenient or misunderstood. But slowly, often through discomfort and disappointment, something began to shift. You started realizing that becoming someone else was costing you your peace. That realization is the beginning of confidence rooted in identity. This kind of confidence does not arrive suddenly or dramatically. It grows quietly as you walk with God and allow Him to affirm who you are while shaping who you are becoming. You begin to understand that growth does not mean rejection of your present self. God is not asking you to erase your personality, your voice, or your story. He is refining you, not replacing you. This understanding brings relief. You stop striving for perfection and start embracing transformation. You realize that being a work in progress does not disqualify you from being loved or used by God. As your confidence grows, so does your awareness of boundaries. You learn that saying no is not selfish and that rest is not weakness. You stop over-explaining your decisions and start trusting your discernment. This shift is powerful because it is not driven by rebellion or pride, but by clarity. You know who you are and you know what drains you. You understand that protecting your peace allows you to show up fully where God has actually called you. Confidence rooted in identity does not need constant validation. It is sustained by alignment. This confidence also changes how you respond to criticism. Where you once absorbed every opinion and internalized every comment, you now pause. You weigh words instead of automatically accepting them as truth. You recognize the difference between correction that shapes you and criticism that diminishes you. This discernment is a sign of maturity. It allows you to remain teachable without being insecure. You can grow without self-rejection because your foundation is not built on perfection, but on God's acceptance. There are still moments of doubt, but they no longer define you. Insecurity may knock, but it no longer lives in your house. When you stumble, you recover faster. When you make mistakes, you extend yourself grace. This grace is not complacency. It is confidence in God's faithfulness to complete what he started in you. You trust that he is patient, intentional, and present in the process. You are no longer racing toward an ideal version of yourself. You are walking with God through real transformation. As you become more comfortable with who you are, comparison loses its power. You can celebrate other women without feeling threatened. You can admire beauty without questioning your own. You understand that your journey is distinct and your calling is specific. God is not confused about where he is taking you. This security frees you to live authentically without masks or performance. Authenticity becomes your strength, not your vulnerability. This growing confidence also deepens your relationship with God. You approach him honestly without pretending to be more spiritual, stronger, or more put together than you are. You trust him with your questions, your weaknesses, and your desires. In return, he meets you with grace. That exchange builds intimacy. You learn that God is not impressed by perfection, but he is pleased with sincerity. Becoming comfortable with who you are while continuing to grow is a sign of deep spiritual health. It shows that you trust God enough to let him shape you without losing yourself. You are no longer striving to earn love or prove worth. You are living from identity, not insecurity. That kind of confidence is rare, beautiful, and unmistakably rooted in God. Peace is often misunderstood as the absence of trouble, but the peace that marks a woman anchored in God's love exists even when life is uncertain. You may still face pressure, unanswered questions, and unexpected challenges, yet there is a steadiness within you that did not come from circumstances improving. It came from knowing where you belong. This peace is not denial or avoidance. It is assurance. It is the quiet confidence that you are held by God regardless of what surrounds you. This kind of peace usually forms after you have tried to control everything and discovered how exhausting that can be. There were seasons when you worried constantly, replayed conversations, anticipated worst-case scenarios, and carried responsibility that was never meant to be yours. Over time, God gently invited you to release that weight. Not all at once, not without struggle, but gradually. Each surrender taught you that his love does not depend on your ability to manage outcomes. Letting go was not easy, but it was freeing. Peace began to replace pressure when trust replaced fear. Being anchored in God's love changes how you interpret difficulty. Instead of CING hardship as punishment or abandonment, you begin to see it as part of a larger story. This does not minimize pain, but it reframes it. You understand that God's presence does not disappear in struggle. In fact, it often becomes more tangible. When you know you are loved, you stop questioning your worth every time something goes wrong. You may still grieve, but you do not unravel. You may still feel uncertain, but you do not feel alone. This peace also affects your pace. You no longer rush through life driven by anxiety or comparison. You become more present, more attentive, more grounded. You learn to wait without panic and to move without striving. Even when you do not have clarity, you trust that God's timing is intentional. This trust calms the internal noise that once dominated your thoughts. Peace becomes less about external calm and more about internal alignment. Being rooted in God's love also teaches you how to rest. Rest no longer feels like guilt or laziness. It becomes an act of faith. You trust that God is at work even when you pause. This rest renews you emotionally and spiritually, allowing you to respond to life instead of constantly reacting to it. From this place of rest, your decisions become wiser, your words more measured, and your reactions less driven by fear. This peace does not make you passive. It strengthens you. Because you are not consumed by anxiety, you can be courageous. You can face hard conversations, make difficult choices, and step into new seasons without being paralyzed by fear. Peace gives you clarity. It allows you to discern what truly matters and what can be released. When your heart is anchored in love, you are not easily shaken by opinions or setbacks. Even in moments when peace feels fragile, the foundation remains. There may be days when worry resurfaces or fear tries to take hold, but now you know where to return. You recognize the voice of love and the voice of fear, and you choose which one to follow. This awareness is growth. It shows that peace is no longer something you chase. It is something you come back to A woman anchored in God's love carries peace as a testimony. It speaks louder than words. It tells the world that security does not come from control, success, or certainty, but from belonging. This peace is not temporary or shallow. It is rooted deeply in love that does not fail. And that love continues to hold you steady no matter what comes next. Hope has a way of revealing what a person truly believes about God. It is easy to hope when life is predictable and comfortable. But the hope that marks a woman of deep faith is born in uncertainty. You have faced moments when the outcome was unclear, when prayers seemed unanswered, and when circumstances refused to change. Yet somehow you did not surrender to despair. Even when discouraged, something within you kept whispering that this was not the end. That inner assurance did not come from optimism or denial. It came from trust rooted deep in your spirit. This kind of hope is shaped by memory. You remember who God has been to you before. You recall seasons when you thought you would not make it through, yet here you are. You remember doors that opened unexpectedly, strength that arrived just in time, and peace that made no sense in the middle of chaos. Those experiences built a quiet confidence in God's character. When new challenges arise, you may still feel fear, but it does not control you. Hope rises because you have seen God's faithfulness with your own eyes. Hope also changes how you speak to yourself. Instead of repeating the language of defeat, you choose words that leave room for God to move. You may acknowledge pain and difficulty, but you do not declare them as permanent. This does not mean you ignore reality. It means you refuse to let reality have the final word. Your faith teaches you that circumstances can shift, hearts can heal, and God can work in ways you cannot predict. That belief shapes your mindset and steadies your heart. There were times when holding on to hope felt risky. It would have been easier to lower expectations and protect yourself from disappointment. Yet you chose to believe anyway. That choice required courage. Hope makes you vulnerable because it admits that you still expect goodness. God honors that vulnerability. Every time you chose to trust him instead of giving in to cynicism, your faith grew stronger. You learned that disappointment does not mean God failed. It often means the story is still unfolding. Hope also influences how you interact with others. You become a source of encouragement, sometimes without even trying. Your presence carries reassurance. You remind people that setbacks do not define the future and that pain does not cancel purpose. Even in your own weakness, your hope speaks. It tells others that God is reliable, that waiting is not wasted, and that light still exists in dark places. This impact may not always be visible, but it is deeply meaningful. When hope is rooted in faith, it does not disappear when circumstances whirs in. It adapts. It learns to trust God, not just for a specific outcome, but for his presence through the process. You may not know how things will turn out, but you know who walks with you. This shift deepens your relationship with God. Hope becomes less about control and more about connection. It anchors you when answers are delayed and strengthens you when clarity is absent. There are still moments when hope feels fragile, when weariness threatens to take over. But even then, you return to what you know. You remind yourself of God's promises, not as guarantees of comfort, but as assurances of his faithfulness. This remembrance reignites hope. It keeps your heart open and your faith alive. A woman who carries hope in uncertain times reflects deep-rooted faith. Her hope is not naive. It is tested and refined. It stands as evidence that she trusts God's character more than her circumstances. And that kind of hope is powerful because it anchors the soul and lights the way forward, even when the path is unclear. Worth is a concept the world often ties to achievement, appearance, and approval, but the worth God places on a woman is completely different. Your value is not measured by your success, your popularity, or your ability to meet expectations. It is not earned by doing more, looking a certain way, or performing well. Your worth flows from one source alone, God's choice to love you, to call you his own, and to delight in you. This truth is revolutionary because it frees you from the exhausting cycle of proving yourself and allows you to live fully from a foundation of divine affirmation. For too long, many women carry the burden of performance-based identity. Society tells you that to be valuable, you must achieve, conform, or be noticed. Every accomplishment becomes a question. Was it enough? Every compliment is measured against doubt. Did they mean it? This relentless measuring can leave you feeling inadequate, worn down, and constantly seeking validation. But God's love interrupts that cycle. He declares your worth unconditionally. You are valuable because he says so, not because of what you do or how others perceive you. Recognizing that your worth is rooted in God transforms every area of life. Decisions that once caused anxiety now carry freedom. You no longer need to overextend yourself to earn approval because God's acceptance is already secure. You stop shrinking, people-pleasing, or masking parts of yourself to fit someone else's standard. Instead, you move with authenticity, knowing that God sees your heart and is pleased with who you are. This security allows you to thrive without being consumed by fear, comparison, or insecurity. Living from divine worth also changes your response to mistakes and failures. When worth is tied to performance, every setback feels catastrophic, every error a proof of inadequacy. But when worth flows from God's love, failures become opportunities for growth rather than judgments on your value. You learn to embrace your imperfections because God does. You extend grace to yourself, recognizing that your identity is not diminished by human shortcomings. This perspective fosters resilience, self-compassion, and a deeper sense of peace. This understanding of worth also influences relationships. You no longer accept treatment that undermines your value. You can set boundaries without guilt, knowing that your significance is not negotiable. At the same time, because your worth is secure, you are able to love others more freely. You are not dependent on them to validate you, which allows your love, generosity, and compassion to flow authentically. Relationships become a reflection of God's love rather than a measure of your success or desirability. When your foundation is God's love, you also navigate comparison differently. Seeing another woman succeed or shine does not diminish your value. You are free to celebrate her without feeling threatened because your identity is anchored in God, not in someone else's achievements. This freedom cultivates gratitude and joy, reinforcing the peace that comes from knowing your worth is unshakable and eternal. Worth rooted in God also empowers purpose. You no longer chase recognition or reward as the primary measure of success. Instead, your energy is directed toward living faithfully, making a difference, and fulfilling the calling God placed in your heart. When your value is already secure, your actions flow from service and love rather than fear and striving. You act boldly, knowing that your identity is intact regardless of external outcome. Finally, understanding that your worth comes from God transforms your self-perception and inner dialogue. You stop questioning whether you are enough and start affirming, I am loved, I am chosen, I am valuable. Every thought of inadequacy can be met with the truth that God delights in you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. This shift is liberating and life-giving. It reshapes how you see yourself, how you live, and how you impact the world around you. A woman who knows her worth in God lives differently. She moves with confidence, embraces growth without fear, sets healthy boundaries, loves authentically, and celebrates others without comparison. Her life becomes a testimony to the unchanging love and delight God has in her. This is the ultimate mark of being gorgeous in God's eyes, knowing that your value is intrinsic, secure, and rooted in the Creator who formed you, called you, and will never let you go.